I am happy to be here. And I'll be honest with you, I'm in a different headspace this episode. This conversation driven by a lot of combos I had this past week with people who I know and people who I don't know. When I put out the last podcast, and just from the reception around it, people were hitting me up, just saying, "Hey Pat, man, I see what you're doing. I'm loving it." And some people were like, "Hey Pat, I've always wanted to do a podcast, or I've always wanted to do this project, but I've never done it because of, XY factors, or one, two, three." And the common theme across all those different conversations was that chase for perfection, right? And when we get to a point where we don't want to dive into anything new because we're not going to be good at it, and that's just natural. You're not going to be good at it the first time. You have to build up that muscle memory. You have to build up those 10,000 hours, as I mentioned last time, but you have to keep going. You have to do it because you don't know who you're going to impact. You don't know who you're going to influence. Like, to us, it's just a small project. To me, this is just a mic, but there's other people who are being encouraged by these conversations. I've had people in Europe that have heard the podcast. I've had someone that reached out to me from Asia that heard the podcast and just gave me a green, the green light of, I don't want to use the word green light, but more so encouragement of, "Yo, Pat, keep going. I love that conversation." I don't know them, but for some reason it has reached, I guess the power of IG and the power of social media has reached places that I've never been before, but it's encouraging people. Right. And I just wanted to offer this piece of transparency and this piece of vulnerability that it's not easy. It's not easy. When you're doing something new, especially something that's out of the norm for you, it's not easy at all. Right. Now, I give you more context. By education, my career, whatever the case is, what I do is I build things, right? So as an engineer, I used to test these nuclear powered machines that were, all documented in the tech manual. So though I was the one turning wrenches or, testing out different things, I had a playbook in front of me, right? As a software, not as a product manager that worked with software developers, I had a roadmap that I built. I had a plan. I knew by quarter one, this is what we had to deliver. Quarter two, three, four, end of the year, this is what, this product needs to look like. At the same time, getting feedback from customers along the way. That gave me the plan. They gave me the visuals. They gave me the idea of what I had to do. As a program manager now with Amazon, even though it's big picture, I still have a roadmap that I'm building. I still have documentation, a scope, if you will, of what this looks like. But when you enter the space here, you don't have any of that. So it is daunting. It really is. And this is out of my comfort zone. Right. And I'm offering that because you guys don't know the mental gymnastics that I go through in between these episodes. I find myself, because I don't have the roadmap, I don't have the formula of, hey, I need, 20 different recordings in order for me to get to X amount of viewers or X amount of, downloads, whatever the case is. I'm still trying to build up this business that is his podcast. And what that looks like, I have no idea. I don't have that 5-year, 10-year, operating model that I can execute, or that playbook that I can execute. Right. Because this looks different. This is foreign to me. Right. But one thing I can say is that that is something that I feel very encouraged to do, because of, I know that it's bigger than me. And one of the things that we were talking about, what I mentioned earlier, like this mental gymnastics that I go through, is I had to call 3 different people this week alone, just for me to say, "Yo, Pat, just keep going." The 3 people I called was my man AP, right? And my mother-in-law, who's my ace, and my boy Dwight, right? And I know all 3 of those, there's a common theme. I give you some context around those conversations. So I called my man AP because at that point I was at a point where I was just like, I don't have any direction. I don't know what this looks like. This is new to me. I don't know if this is even what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know if this is even like what's worthwhile right now. And all he did was, "Man, Pat, you have to go back to your why. You have to tap into why you wanted to do this, and don't deviate from that." Right. You had a plan of action. No, you didn't have, the scope of work planned out, but you had conviction around why you wanted to do this project. right? So that's that first reminder that I had that, yo, keep going, right? Even that wasn't enough though. Number two, I called my man Dwight, and I told him the same thing. Oh, D, I'm having this problem. I'm just kind of figuring out what's going on. Do people even care about these type of conversations? Because everything you see out there is about current events and sports and business and so on and so forth. And this is completely off the path, right? And he said, man, and I told him about the anxiety that I get around these things. He said, man, that's the enemy. He said, I've seen you talk in front of VPs. I've seen you talk in front of the president of companies. I've seen you do demos for local public figures. I've seen you in spaces that most people couldn't even fathom. Right. And it's not being boastful or bragging, but by nature and just by blessings, I've always been in these different forums. Right. And you've never, you know, were shooken by those conversations at all. I mean, naturally they came to me. I mean, naturally I was okay with those, those like working in those different capacities. But for some reason, this one gives me so much anxiety. I've never heard you even talk like this. So that was a wake up call for me to like really assess what's happening and for me not to let the enemy win at all. And then the icing on the cake is a conversation I have with my mother-in-law. Bro, these conversations are having back to back. All right, different days, but within a week or 2 week period. And then I called my mother-in-law. I just happened to be talking to her honestly, because my kids were FaceTiming. I was feeding my son Caleb, and typically I wouldn't even talk to her about different things like that. Everything we talk about is about the kids or stuff at work, so on and so forth. We have a dope relationship, but for some reason I just laid it out there, and I told her the same thing. I said, I don't know what my direction is with this. I don't have the roadmap found, in plans. I didn't use the word roadmap, but I kind of use my own descriptors. And she said, well, it sounds like you're not leaning on God. She said, it sounds like that this is new for you. In order for you to really figure that out, you have to lean on God. And she was exactly right. Because like in the midst of all these things, I've never sat down and really talked to God about what is it that you want me to do? How do you want me to use this platform or use the gifts that you have given me towards this? I went to you about the idea, right? That first inception. Oh man, I would talk to God all the time, praying and journaling and saying, yeah, this is what it's going to be. But as soon as I picked up a mic and started recording, I never went back to you for guidance. I never went back to you for just clarity on different things. I never went back to you about just the peace that you want me to have about this, and also the audience that you want me to have about this. I'm a firm believer when God gives you something, it's not about you at all. Like this, right? Me in front of this mic and this camera right now, this has nothing to do with me. This is for someone else that's listening to this. I'm a firm believer in that. So I leave with this here. And this is actually a quote from Les Brown. The reason why I'm pulling this in here is because I'm speaking from a person, and I mentioned this before, that I'm speaking from a place of someone that hasn't been delivered, but someone that's actually in the trenches with you. And if you have something on your heart, if you have a project, if you have anything that you feel as though you're getting great conviction around, you have to do it. I'm telling you, you don't know the lives you're going to impact, because this isn't about you at all these things that is planted inside of you, that's God planted in front of you or inside of you, so you can execute for the greater good. And I mean that, and I'm a firm believer in that. So I leave with this, and I pulled this up because it's something that actually came up. In the midst of all these conversations that I had, this quote popped up from Les Brown. Les Brown, entrepreneur, philanthropist, motivational speaker. They consider him one of the greatest minds of this era. And he said that the graveyard is the richest place on earth, because it is here that you will find all the hopes and the dreams that were never fulfilled, the books that were never written, the songs that were never sung, the inventions that were never shared, the cures that were never discovered, all because someone was too afraid to take that first step, keep with the problem, or determined to carry out their own dream. So I sit here in front of you. That's the end of the quote, but I sit here in front of you, and I really want you to process that. And if you're not a Les Brown fan or you don't like quotes, then I mean, that's all good. But I want you to sit down and really take self-inventory on the different things that you have not executed because you were afraid to do it, because you didn't have all the answers. You didn't have the roadmap. You were chasing that perfection. right? So I sit here and I challenge you to completely change your narrative, because I'm a firm believer that all the things that you're trying to accomplish, or all the dreams that you have in front of you or inside of you, that is planted from a higher power, right? I don't know who your higher power is, but my higher power is God. All right. And I'm telling you that these things are for you to execute. Okay. So I end this episode on that note. And I encourage you this week to try something different. I encourage you this week to really sit still and just chase after God's word, to battle those monsters that are preventing you from executing and reaching your full potential. All right. And later on, we'll get into some of the things that I'm doing currently that's different than what I've done in the past. I've been in a space where I'm tired of ideas, and I'm tired of always having a vision, but now it's time for me to execute on those visions. And we'll get into that later on in some of these conversations. But with that said, I appreciate you listening, and I pray that this falls on willing ears. All right. Y'all be easy and take care.